It's Global Studies Day today, and we're going to talk about a book that is culturally different from ours. And we know that because it's got different vegetables that can be planted in a garden than what we normally see and grow. In fact, the story is called The Ugly Vegetables. I wonder why they're ugly. By Grace Lynn. The Ugly Vegetables. In the spring, it's spring now, I helped my mother start our garden. We used tall shovels to turn the grass upside down, and I saw pink worms wriggle around. It was hard work. When we stopped to rest, we saw that the neighbors were starting their gardens too. Just like Mrs. Wheeler's starting her garden right now. Maybe you're starting your garden right now. Hello, Irma, my mother called to Mrs. Crummarine. Mrs. Crummarine was digging too. She was using a small shovel, one that fit her hand. Mommy, I asked, why are we using such big shovels? Mrs. Crummarine has a small one. Because our garden needs more digging. I'm making my garden bigger this year, so it needs more digging too. I helped my mother plant the seeds, and we dragged the hose to the garden. Hi, Linda. Hi, Nikki, I called to the Fitzgeralds. They were sprinkling water on their garden with green watering cans. Mommy, I asked, why are we using a hose? Linda and Mickey use watering cans. Because our garden needs more water. They must be growing big vegetables, or maybe lots of vegetables. I'm interested to see which. Let me get the picture. There we go. Then my mother drew funny pictures on pieces of paper, and I stuck them into the ground. Hello, Roseanne, my mother called across the street to Mrs. Angel Howe. Mommy, I asked, why are we sticking these papers in the garden? Mrs. Angel Howe has seed packages in her garden. Because our garden is going to grow Chinese vegetables, she told me. These are the names of the vegetables in Chinese, so I can tell which plants are growing where. How interesting. My garden packages look like that. Her names for her vegetables look like that, written differently in Chinese. Because remember, today's Global Arts Day. It's when we think about how differently people live in the world than we do. One day I saw our garden growing. Little green stems that looked like grass had popped out from the ground. Our garden's growing, I yelled. Our garden's growing. I rushed over to the neighbors' gardens to see if theirs had grown. Their plants looked like little leaves. Mommy, I said, why do our plants look like grass? The neighbors' plants look different. Because they're growing flowers, she said. Why can't we grow flowers, I asked. Oh, these are better than flowers, she said. I think so too. I like flowers and vegetables. I'll take you on a tour of my vegetable garden. Soon all the neighbors' gardens were blooming. Up and down the street grew rainbows of flowers. Oh, it is lovely. It is. The wind always smelled sweet, and butterflies and bees flew everywhere. Everyone's garden was beautiful, except for ours. Well, I like it when there's vegetables growing in a garden. I think that's very beautiful. I mean, I guess it's not the same as flowers, is it? But it is beautiful. Our garden was all dark green and ugly. Why didn't we grow flowers? I asked again. These are better than flowers, Mommy said again. I looked, but I saw only black, purple, green vines, fuzzy, wrinkled leaves, prickly stems, and a few yellow flowers. I don't think so, I said. You wait and see, said Mommy. Before long, our vegetables grew. Some were big and lumpy, some were thin and green and covered with bumps. Some were just plain icky yellow. They were ugly vegetables. Well, they're interesting looking vegetables. I'm not sure I would refer to them as ugly, but I guess if you want flowers, maybe. I don't know. I like vegetables. Sometimes I would go over to the neighbors and look at their pretty gardens. They would show the poppies and the peonies and the petunias to me, and I would feel sad that our garden wasn't as nice. One day, my mother and I picked the vegetables from the garden. We filled a whole wheelbarrow full of them. We wheeled them to the kitchen. My mother washed them, took a big knife, and started to chop them. Ay-yow, she said when she cut them. She had to use all her muscles. The vegetables were hard and tough. This is a xiao hu gua, Mommy said, handing me a bumpy curled vegetable. She pointed at the other vegetables. This is shan chai, and that's tong hao. I'm not sure I said that correctly, but I gave it a shot. If we know somebody Chinese, we could ask them for the correct way to say it. I went outside to play. While I was playing catch with Mickey, a magical aroma, an aroma is a beautiful smell, filled the air. I saw the neighbors standing on their porches with their eyes closed, smelling the sky. You try it. My house actually smells like dinner. I made an apple pie for dinner tonight, so it smells good too. They took deep breaths of air like they were trying to eat the smell. Wow. I would like to be there to smell that. The wind carried it up and down the street. Even the bees and the butterflies seemed to smell the scent on the breeze. See how they made that line of smoke look like a smelling? It doesn't usually look like smoke. That's so that you can tell what they're doing. I smelled it too. It made me hungry. And it was coming from my house. I wonder if she'll like the vegetables now. Do you think so? I think so too. When I followed the smell to my house, my mother was putting a big bowl of soup on the table. The soup was yellow and red and green and pink. This is a special soup, Mommy said, and she smiled. She gave me a small bowl full of it, and I tasted it. It was so good. The flavors of the soup seemed to dance in my mouth and laugh all the way down to my stomach. I smiled. Do you like it, Mommy asked me. I nodded and held out my bowl for some more. It's made from our vegetables, she told me. Then the doorbell rang, and we ran to open the door. Who do you think was at the door? I'm going to refer back into the text and see if I can answer that question. Oh, do you think maybe the neighbors smelled that amazing smell and wanted to know? They must be friendly neighbors, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't come to their house to ask about that. I'm not sure that's what it is. Let's look and see. All of our neighbors were standing at the door holding flowers. Oh, they're going to trade what they grew for what she grew. That seems fair, doesn't it? We noticed you were cooking, Mr. Fitzgerald laughed as he held out his flowers. We thought maybe you might be interested in a trade. We laughed too, and my mother gave them each their own bowl of her special soup. What a good idea. My mother told them what each vegetable was and how she grew it. She gave them the soup recipe and put some soup into jars for them to take home. I ate 5 bowls of soup. I guess she likes those ugly vegetables after all. It was the best dinner ever. What a fun day to make soup and have all your neighbors show up to share and bring beautiful flowers for the table. That's a friendly soup, not an ugly soup, isn't it? The next spring, when my mother was starting her garden, she planted some flowers next to the Chinese vegetables. Mrs. Crummerine, the Fitzgeralds in the Angel House, planted some Chinese vegetables next to their flowers. Soon the whole neighborhood was growing Chinese vegetables in their gardens. Up and down the street, little green plants poked out of the ground. Some looked like leaves and some looked like grass, and when the flowers started blooming, you could smell the soup in the air. Oh dear, that would be delicious. I would like to have them for a neighbor, would you? Now, at the very end of the book, we have a glossary. And a glossary is an important thing that you sometimes find at the end of fiction books. This isn't a fiction book. This was a small moment story from her life. Remember when we talked about small moment stories and we wrote about them ourselves? Well, this is a small moment from her life, and at the end of it, she's written a glossary. She's written the Chinese characters. And we don't call Chinese writing just writing or letters. We call them characters. So these are like our ABCs, only these are how the Chinese make them. And it's very important in Chinese to make them beautiful and artistic. That's a big part of the writing. Just like when I asked you to anchor your writing on the line and be careful how you make your letters. They have to be careful too. So here's all our other vegetables. This one is called, I'm going to try to read it, but I'm not going to be very good at it. It's called Kung Xin Zai. It literally means a hollow heart vegetable. The stem is hollow like a tube. Shenzai. This is a red-lined, red-rimmed vegetable here. Kind of looks like one of the houseplants I have in my house. It's kind of beautiful. This one is called Zhouzai. It's also called Chinese leeks. These look like blades of grass, kind of like the onion grass that we have around our school and probably around our houses. This is Tung Hao. They have chrysanthemum-like flowers and edible leaves. Oh, so you can eat. Edible means you can eat it. It won't hurt you. This is Shou Huang Gua. It's called a Chinese cucumber. They're long, thin, and covered with bumps. We know cucumbers. This is called Xigua. The inside of this vegetable is spongy looking, and you should only eat it when it's fresh. It tastes best then. This one is Kugwa. It means bitter melon. It's brightly colored, bumpy, and bittersweet. That would be an interesting flavor of bittersweet, I think. And this is Fulufu. These are pale yellow gourds that are used for decoration. So you don't eat those. You just use them to decorate your table. That would be beautiful, wouldn't it? So in this story, that was an interesting story, wasn't it? Now, there's a few markets in the area around here that sell vegetables, these Chinese vegetables. And that might be a really cool thing to do with your family after the coronavirus is over, to go look at those ugly vegetables in the store. You might not buy any, but I promise you it's beautiful to look at. And you know what's really interesting about those stores? They smell different. They smell different than any other store you'll ever go into. And that's kind of a really cool and interesting experience. All right, I'm going to put a lesson together for you for this. And I'm also going to give you a tour of my garden. All right, I love you. Have a wonderful day.